Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. It is said that India's creator economy is growing at a compounded annual rate of 25%, catalyzed by the flexible work hours, remote working, and renewal of passion pursuits during the COVID 19 pandemic. The country going increasingly mobile and digital has played a role too. A global TMT Deloitte study says that India will have a billion smartphone users by 2026, and cheaper smartphones and data packages have made being a creator easier than ever. But it's not as if the cash is flowing in. The bulk of the revenues go to a small pool of creators, while most others struggle to sustain their creative journey. So, what lies ahead for India's creator economy? Will it continue to boom, or will there be a reckoning at some stage? And what about sustainable revenues? And how will the evolution of it as a marketing tool play out? Let's find out.
All Indians matter.
We have two guests on the show today. First, Meghna Mittal, the co founder and CMO of GSharp Media, which has two brands under its umbrella, Songfest India and Hooper.ai. While Songfest focuses on giving musicians the creative freedom to explore new sonic avenues, Hooper is a music licensing marketplace for musicians and content creators. Meghna focuses on marketing strategies while scaling up products and has been pivotal in steering several viral marketing campaigns that have accumulated more than 100 million views. Welcome, Meghna.
Hi, Ashraf. Very good to be here. Excited to be a part of this podcast. Thank you.
Next, Gaurav Dagaonkar, the co founder and CEO of Hooper.ai and award winning singer and music producer. After graduating from IIM Ahmedabad, Gaurav pursued a career in music, gaining fame for his songs College Days, Main Dhoondne Ko Zamane Mein, and his signature synchronicity YouTube mashups. Gaurav has recorded singers such as Arijit Singh, Shreya Ghoshal, Mohit Chauhan, KK, Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, and Shalmali Kholgade. He co-founded G-Sharp Media in 2018. Today, the Songfest platform has over 5 lakh subscribers on YouTube. It offers solutions to brands and video creators in collaboration with popular artists and has created award-winning branded music content for the likes of Nestle, Mars Wrigley, Hike Sticker Chat, Alt Balaji, and Magic Pin. Welcome, Gaurav.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Glad to be on the show.
Meghna, how did the creator economy become a thing in India?
So, Ashraf, I think for any field, for that matter, or an industry to come into being and thrive and sustain in any market, right? It needs to have a proper infrastructure for it first, right? And when there is this infrastructure, it provides an opportunity to multiple then organizations, ideas, new startups to kind of build their business models around it and flourish. So I think the similar way for content creator economy, right? The infrastructure was obviously, as you also mentioned pretty much in the beginning of this show, the availability of internet and the smartphones, right? Now, as of today, if 700 million people in India are having smartphones and access to internet, so that has probably set the base and that infrastructure that a lot of then other companies, like the short format apps, the platforms, required essentially to take it as an opportunity and provide it as a platform to these content creators. So I think these two major factors, the internet availability and the smartphones accessibility, and the newer platforms, the short format apps like Josh, Moj, etc., which have become quite popular, have provided that platform to these creators to express themselves and create more content. So these were the two, I think, factors which actually promoted the entire creator economy, and not just in India, I would say throughout the world, right? And in the last 2 years, everyone has sort of experienced the pandemic. In the pandemic, times, a large number of people started creating content online, because the access to create large format content, probably going out for shoots, was not possible, right? So that has definitely accelerated this entire process of creating short format content and expressing themselves through these platforms in the last 2 years.
Meghna, what does the creator landscape look like at the moment? To the layman's eye, it seems like everybody is creating content from music to GIFs to text, but very few seem to have a grip on what actually works or how to generate revenue.
Right. I agree with you, Ashraf. Having said that, I think the basis of content creation not everybody necessarily wanted to generate revenue out of when they wanted to start creating content, right? For example, one of the studies, in fact, by Adobe shows that about 48% of the people wanted to express themselves, right, when they create content. And on these short format apps, also, when these platforms were launched, people wanted to experiment and try out what they could possibly offer, right? How can they express themselves, and they take a lot of pride and passion into expressing themselves through these content pieces, right? So I think the factor that a lot of creators start with content creation is because they wanted to express themselves in the first place, rather than thinking about directly the monetization. Of course, monetization is a part of the process, and that comes into picture once they are, they sort of understand how can I create content, what can I use as my resources and tools, and then perhaps figuring out now I how can I generate revenue out of it too, right? So I think, in fact, on Hooper we have seen a lot of the creators, right, who are from the regional places, right? They have, probably 79 subscribers to begin with, right? But they are the ones who are actually paying and putting a lot of efforts into creating the content. They are actually investing in tools and technologies that could help them create better content. So I think for me right now, the creators, it's a good start where the creators at least want to express themselves, right? And then the monetizations will eventually come in for sure.
I think that's a very good point, Meghna. And as far as regional content is concerned, we're going to talk a lot more about it. But before that, Gaurav, are content creators actually able to make a living in India? According to the 2022 Linktree Creator Report, for most, content creation isn't their main source of livelihood. And I think that's something Meghna referred to also.
Right.
Nearly 66% of them pursue it only part time, while 43% spend 5 hours or less a week on it. So, of course, these are global numbers, but they can't be better here for sure.
Yeah, right, Ashraf. Absolutely. It would not be right to say that all the content creators now make a living out of creating content, right? But at the same time, you have to realize that one, it is a nascent industry. I mean, content creation itself is less than 2 decades old as a concept, right? When YouTube came, it was maybe 2007, 8. Facebook became popular around 2010, 11. And the bulk of this content creation has happened in the last 4 to 5 years. At the same time, I would say that, let's say, if we look at India, right, which has, it said, about 60 to 80 million content creators. I think about, maybe a million and a half to 2 million would be doing this full time. And when I say full time, Ashraf, I don't even mean that they are making necessarily a living out of it. They are at it. They could be college students, or they could be retired people too, or they could be people, who want to get into it now. But this is what they want to do. If you look at, let's say, professionals who are possibly only making money off content creation, I would put that number at about maybe a lakh and a half to a 2 lakh people right now. Although, let's say, YouTube said that it generated about 6 lakh, equivalent full-time paying jobs, equivalent salaries. And I think that's about 2% of the population of the creator economy that makes money full-time from content creation. But the way I think that a creator should look at it is that content creation should not necessarily from day one become, you shouldn't look at it as a full-time vehicle to generate revenue. In fact, it can be a great way to augment your brand. I know people say a Rachna Ranade, or an Ankur Varik who started creating content. Or let's look at me. There are reverse examples too. Let's say I was a content creator and I also run a startup now. So it essentially is a phenomenal way to augment, your brand. There are people who started with content creation, let's say like me, probably have added, let's say, traditional revenue sources to themselves. Say like a Bhuvan Bam, who's one of India's topmost content creators, is now also a producer, right? There are singers who get discovered on Instagram and then start doing live events, right? So it's essentially about using content to activate a source of revenue, get discovered, and then not lose sight of the fact that there could be 10 other sources of revenue that you might want to activate.
So, Gaurav, how do you see the creator economy evolving in India and eventually settling into something sustainable for creators? What do you think will be the drivers? So, Meghna's already identified easy net availability, easy smartphone availability, the apps that support that. But what else?
I think one of the big factors is the fact that, platforms have developed and sustained, over years, making them very, very large distributor networks and making brands, attracted to these channels. Say, for example, YouTube today is a great driver of revenue for content creators. You're seeing Instagram becoming a phenomenal driver of revenue, right? So it is essentially the sustenance of these platforms that is very important for creators to thrive, creators to flourish, and develop their fan bases, right? But at the same time, I feel that let's say today, if there are 1.5 or 2 lakh people generating full-time jobs, how do we make it 10x? And what are the other sources also that a content creator can activate? Let's say if I am a content creator and I generate a fan base on a certain platform, can I also activate revenue through sales of, say, merchandise, right? Can I put up courses which people can then download? Maybe tomorrow there could be fan funding, there could be NFTs, right? So I think it is important for a lot of these levers to get unlocked. Platforms today are enabling multiple monetization tools for their creators, and I think the more of these tools that start emerging and getting standardized is what will result in creators then looking at a very sustained form of revenue by creating content and by unlocking different forms of income through these different sources. Say, for example, Hooper is a phenomenal way of earning revenue through music. A music creator has created, say, 40 tracks, could be songs, could be background scores, and he or she puts them up on Hooper. And there are hundreds and thousands of content creators who might license this music, or even a brand might license it, and it's passive income, right? So then this musician could say that just creating music resulted in multiple sources of revenue for me. That is very important. We often tend to bucket our revenue sources in just one or two streams, but it's very important that content creators have a 360-degree revenue model for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a very critical point. Meghna, did the TikTok ban impact the creator economy in India?
Definitely. I think it impacted the creator economy in two ways. One, for the creators who had actually, and this was something that we were talking right before this conversation also, that, it takes a lot of time, efforts, energy to kind of build a certain audience base for your content, right? So for a lot of creators who had already done that and invested a lot of time in TikTok, right? A lot of Indian creators had, the largest fan following on TikTok at one point in time than the rest of the world, right? So they definitely saw that this entire distribution channel for them broke, right? At the same time, it provided a new opportunity for the native platforms to kind of come up in the market and say that now we will be able to provide that platform which TikTok did. Having said that, it definitely, from a creator standpoint, fragmented the entire market. And a lot of brands, in fact, who had sort of started their influencer activations right on TikTok, it also kind of broke that distribution channel to say that now they can do it on multiple platforms. And now each one to its own and has to decide which platform works for them. Having said that, I still feel that from a startup perspective, and the native platforms got that opportunity to now build on a model which actually got proved by say an entry with a TikTok.
Yeah, and since you mentioned brands, Meghna, how do brands
Yeah.
see content creators and how are they working them into their marketing plans?
Right. So, as a marketer myself, and having worked with brands over these last 3.5 years with Songfest and Hooper, we have realized that brands definitely want multiple distribution channels. Earlier, there were traditional ways to advertise themselves through TV, through radio channels, and other such traditional platforms. Nowadays, I think influencers bring in that major distribution channel for brands, right? It also gives them a human connect, because when an influencer talks about a certain product or a cause, right, it definitely has that human value that the audiences connect with, right? And it comes from a more genuine approach for a brand also, where they feel like this is a better approach than the other traditional channels, perhaps, to reach out to their target audiences, right? So I think brands have been coming to us also, with music, how can we actually integrate with influencers, right? And maximize this entire outreach for their audiences. So I think definitely brands use influencers and the content creators as, a tool for brand visibility and creating some sort of salience for their products and services.
Right. Gaurav, talk to us about regional language content. Is that what creators and even brands are focusing on now?
Oh, absolutely. I think not just creators, brands, but in fact, even as consumers, right? Aren't we consuming a lot of regional content today? You see so many of these regional OTT players and platforms coming up. I can think of so many, like Planet Marathi is coming up for Marathi. There's Hoichoi. There's Stage that producing content in Haryanvi and Rajasthani, right? So I think primarily 70% or maybe even more of India's digital users are consuming content in their vernacular languages. So regional is definitely becoming really big on digital. And in terms of attracting brands, tier two and tier three cities today have a very, very high propensity of spending. You're talking of disposable incomes of, over 3,000, 4,000 crore, right? And again, very, very deep smartphone penetration, across India. So creators, for them, it's easier to communicate in their mother tongue. I think when YouTube and Facebook began, some of the earliest adopters were creating content in English, because that's what they saw in other parts of the world. But very soon, people started creating content in Hindi. Initially, there were English covers and there were Hindi covers and Hindi originals and so on. And similarly, it has given rise to a huge number of content creators across India who are making content in their regional languages, and they establish a local connect. One, it's natural, it's more comfortable, and I think from an audience perspective, let's not forget that, across any state, you still get like a 10, 20 million audience. It's not small at all. So brands also love to work with regional content creators. I think we ourselves, as Songfest, we did a lot of work with brands across Tamil, Bangla, Telugu. So I remember for Tamil, we worked with a Tamil influencer called Fun Bucket, to try and promote it. Right now, even with Hooper, we are working with different regional influencers. So, in Bengal, there is an influencer called Shibaji Paul, there is Rohan Nag, Feet Outside. So every brand requires, as Meghna said, you want visibility, you want a local connect. So regional content, nothing better than having, regional content being created, being consumed. And look, I think Ashraf, just from a philosophy perspective, right? What better than, preserving our, local languages, our local cultures? Otherwise, if we all just gravitate towards, a global trend, then we lose our individuality. So I'm very, very glad with the emergence of regional content across all platforms.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, just to give you a parallel example of newspapers and news media in general, it's really the Indian language content that is driving it. I mean, we all think that Times of India is the most read paper in India. It's not.
Yes,
It's really the Hindi papers. The Dainik Jagran is number one, which is read many times more than the Times of India, 6 or 7 times more. And
absolutely.
so that's why, when we in the media always say that, given the vastness of India, the different languages and the different cultures across the country, we always look upon it as a subcontinent rather than a single country when it comes to understanding it as a market. So I think what you're saying is extremely relevant.
No, you're right. And just to add one more point here,
Sure.
even for us at Hooper, one of the key discoveries was that there's so much regional video being made, and there is also corresponding demand for regional music, because it enhances the storytelling. And when we look at regional content, we often talk about video or language, but it's also regional instruments, that for us have been a huge discovery. Like, for example, let's say if we're creating Bengali folk, then there is so much, there's Bhatiyali, there is Jhumur, you can have Rabindra Sangeet. What kind of music would soundtrack a Macher Jhol versus what kind of, track could soundtrack a Chole Bhature? You might want North Indian instruments there, right? So there is so much demand.
That's
Oh,
interesting.
absolutely. Like let's say a vlogger is saying that, दोस्तों मैं आज आपको उदयपुर घुमाऊंगा, or I'm going to show you one of Chhatrapati
Mhm.
Shivaji Maharaj's fort. Now, won't that video look 100 times more, better, and the storytelling be impactful if the music represents that particular character and culture versus just some random electronic track, you know? So for us, this kind of storytelling through, the regional, instruments and regional music is also a very important part of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think those are great points. But Gaurav, I want to come back to the revenue models for just a second. Now, both of you have spoken to some extent about them. Is there anything you can add to that? I mean, what are the different content and revenue models that you foresee coming up over the next, say, decade?
I can add a few that I can foresee, but I would also like to say that some of the existing ones are just going to become a lot more prevalent or a lot more, standardized, and they'll stabilize too. Because if you see, apart from YouTube and, maybe one or two platforms, a lot of platforms are still struggling to get their own, monetization model in place. So, barring YouTube and maybe a couple of other platforms, I think a lot of other platforms still have to get their own monetization models in place, right? So, one, let's look at all the possible revenue options, right, for a content creator. You can make money through ads. Today, if I'm a content creator, my content, which is resting on multiple platforms, can make money through ads. I can make money as an influencer through brand associations. Today, there are affiliate programs that happen. So even we've activated an affiliate program where creators recommend certain services or they recommend certain products, and they can, earn a commission out of it. You can sell merchandise. A lot of musicians, particularly, are activating the source of revenue. There are live events which people can tap into, and I'm talking about live events not just, let's say, in the physical on ground space, but probably even in the metaverse. Looking forward in the future, can you create an avatar, and can you have events in the metaverse? You can earn revenues through licensing of your content, which is very exciting. You can have music that gets licensed by content creators, and you make money while you sleep. These days there are consulting platforms that have come up. One has recently approached me to, so I know for a fact that there are consulting platforms where people can consult content creators. There is fan funding, where, let's say, if I'm a well-known creator and I want to create a piece of content, there are fans who can participate in my content production and probably have some equity in the content I create. There are non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that can be minted, and any trade that happens could result in a commission that the content creator earns. There are collaborations that can happen where people pay each other to collaborate with them. One of the most exciting ways in the future, I feel, is where, from a content creator perspective, is probably where OTTs will also start using user generated videos on their platforms, where we'll see a massive explosion of mass visibility across those platforms too, and a new revenue stream. So yeah, multiple different sources if you really look at it that way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Meghna, coming back to you, how much power do creators have over the data that the handles generate, and do the platforms land up taking away a chunk of the revenues?
So yeah, I mean, from today, creators have access to more data and tools and technology than ever, right? Because in everything, in all the industries, we are seeing that there is a tech integration happening that could scale things up, right? And a lot of platforms now, in fact, when it comes to content creation, right, are providing a lot of data about the kind of content that you're creating, right, the kind of audiences you are attracting, whether it's what is the age group, what is the geographical distribution, right, what is the watch time, right, estimated retention, subscriber growth, and so on and so forth, right. Having said that, at some level the platforms are also leveraging this data to not make it readily available for you to interact perhaps directly with your followers or subscriber growth, so you may not have their details, right. In fact, every marketer is running behind that data but of course the platforms also need to have some sort of leverage to make sure that the audiences are sort of resting on their platforms, right. Otherwise the switch can happen anytime, right. So data, in fact, is the power that these platforms want to sort of own, right. And in that process, because they are providing a lot of these insights to the creators, particularly in this specific case, it's okay to keep some sort of monetization too, because they have actually built those platforms and they are providing, they have also invested equally. So I think as a platform fee, if platforms are keeping, say, 70%, 50%, 40% basis, which platform are we talking about? I think it's kind of okay to do that. But at the same time, content creators today have a lot of data at their disposal and they can utilize it and leverage it in many, many forms.
And Meghna, so what do you think is the accurate size of the Indian creator economy at the moment, and what do you think it will be 5 years from now?
So currently, I think we are also relying on a lot of studies, case studies that have happened by major players in this market, and we've estimated about 60 to 80 million content creators in India who are presently creating content actively, right? Although we can say that probably about a lakh and a half are able to monetize it properly and pursue it as a serious profession, right? And create content on a continuous basis. Having said that, the rest of the people are also in that category where they're right now perhaps pursuing it as a passion but can foresee creating a profession out of it too in future, right. So there are about these 60-80 million people creating actively content on a day-to-day basis on several platforms, right. And we have seen, in fact, a funding of more than $2.5 billion happening within the content creation space, right. So I think in, say, the next 4 5 years, we are expecting about this economy to grow to 2000 to 2500 crore by 2025, if I have to say.
Yes, that's a significant jump.
Jump. Yeah.
Gaurav, we've seen large brands tap this opportunity. We've already spoken a little bit about that. How can small businesses tap this opportunity?
I think small businesses have to be quite creative in their approach, right? One is also the data factor that Meghna was mentioning, right? Today, more than ever, small businesses can benefit by accessing a lot of data that helps them target campaigns in a very specific manner to their potential customer. Let's you take our own example. We are an up and coming music licensing platform. So for us, we want to target content creators who create videos, who use music in their videos, right? And it's a very particular type of consumer. And today, there is a lot more data than ever before that is available. Whether you use Google, you use Facebook, or any other platform, you can actually, use data to reach out to the right customer. So as a small business, that helps you. You're not at least trying to fish in the dark, or trying to just go all out. You have a lot more access to data. In terms of content creators also, then once you know that, okay, a lot of my consumers, let's say, reside in a certain type of an area, or they belong to a certain geography or a certain demography, then you can use influencers to also activate them. The beauty of working with micro influencers or nano influencers is that they build a lot of trust. They're able to create content that's relatable, to people. So a lot of brands you'll see are now working with a lot of micro and nano influencers, and particularly these are small businesses, and not the large brands that I'm talking about. But I think my advice to any small business would be that, boss, you have to think of yourself like a content creator first. Before you become a large brand, you are yourself like a content creator, and nothing stops any business or brand today from creating stories, from creating reels, from creating engaging posts, and building a community around your brand just the way a content creator would do. What does a content creator do? He or she, comments on a certain trending topic, or they create something which is very relatable to people. Similarly, brands also, or the creators create stuff that emotionally appeals to audiences. The other day I was meeting, a friend. She runs a sari brand, and they create stories with their weavers, their buyers, what a sari means to them, and they've created, an audience for themselves. Similarly, there are new businesses that are creating coffee that, talk about people's experience, when they consume that coffee, and what is their ambition like, and they're trying to link coffee with ambition. So I think, essentially, if you think out of the box and you create content like a creator, then as a small business, you are a part of the creator economy. It's not necessary that you always have to engage a third party, agency or an influencer. You yourself can start creating content, and it can start with the founders themselves. So I think that would be my advice. One of the examples I can give of a creative utilization is, moment marketing. So a friend of ours runs an app, and Magic Pin is the name of the app. And there was a very big campaign by a company, and they did a spoof on that particular campaign within 5 days of that campaign launching. So what happened was it went viral. We had executed that campaign, so we know how much of, I would say, moment marketing it was. But you have to think out of the box, and you have to sometimes put yourself on the line, and think like a creator. That's very, very important for small businesses, because they will not have the
Yeah,
luxury
yeah,
like large brands to just spend crores every month on marketing. It has to be very, very real, very organic.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The budgets are a huge issue, but I think that
Yes.
can be overcome by smart thinking, like you said. Now, Gaurav, you've already talked about regional language content. What are the other 4 or 5 major trends that you see over the next 5 years?
I think one of the biggest trends that will happen in the creator economy is syndication of content. Right now, still a lot of creators, they end up creating content for one platform. जीना यहाँ मरना यहाँ इसके सिवा जाना कहाँ kind of an approach where they they build one single channel, and it happened with
Yeah,
TikTok.
I'm not surprised you use that analogy, given the fact that you're a singer.
Yeah,
But yeah, please
as a
continue.
yeah, as music people, these are analogies that come. But TikTok, I know a few of our friends who had invested a few years only building a channel on one platform, only to see that one fine day,
Yeah.
if the platform for whatever reason does not continue, hey, what happens to my channel and my, the entire fan base, and what happens to those videos too? Do you know an interesting fact, Rushdie? Most people don't even save their videos properly. They upload it on the platform. If you ask them 3 years later that do you have a list or a well saved directory of all your videos, many of these creators actually struggle, to find that, okay, I don't know where I saved them. right?
Yeah,
So
I've heard of that. You know,
you know
it's tremendously
yeah,
harmful, I think, to your
absolutely,
business prospects.
absolutely. So imagine, a creator, a long format creator who has created, say, 80 or 90 videos over the last 4 years, gets an opportunity tomorrow from a new platform or an OTT saying that, you have created all these amazing 80, 90 videos. Let's start your, entire channel and let's syndicate your content here. I think that's going to become very big, whether it is short format, whether it is long format. So my advice to creators is to be very, they have to preserve the content they create. Somewhere I think even our business helps them a lot in terms of licensing music that's cleared across platforms. So that is one big thing. The second that I am a big believer in is funding, like fan funding or brand funding, and sort of having equity within creators, singers, or artists, because you're seeing a lot of examples where fans or communities believe in a certain artist, or a brand helps a certain artist. So why not do it exactly the way, say, investors or VCs have, traditionally worked in terms of building certain startups or, companies. You build exciting companies, you invest in their future, and then you also get a slice of the pie when, that company becomes big. Similarly, if there is a local or a hyper local, regional artist who people believe in, and fans come together to fund, let's say, the first 20 or 40 videos for that particular singer or that particular influencer, who becomes an influencer, we all know that then the sky is the limit, right? Today there are influencers who are charging lakhs and lakhs per single, brand deal that they do. So, you can get similar returns on your investment. So to me, that fan funding is a very big possibility in the area of innovation. And then, of course, I think the third big area which could come, become big, and we're seeing some examples of it even today, is the metaverse. I think 20 years back, if somebody would have told me that, let's say, people are cultivating farms on a social media platform, or people are, buying clothes without going to a store, it would have been laughed at. 20 years back, I don't think anyone would have believed that there could be a world where you don't need to step out of your house in 10 minutes. Today morning,
Yeah,
my
they're even
wife,
buying real estate, I'm told.
they're buying real
Yeah,
estate. People are buying
absolutely.
luxury cars online. Today morning, at 7 o'clock, my wife said that, the milk is out and we ordered on Blinkit, and 10 minutes, the milk is at your doorstep, right? So you're living in a world that's changing. And when we talk about possibilities of the metaverse, I am a big believer. I mean, I am not at all somebody who disbelieves it. I think there could be a time when, people are spending time. It is deep technology right now, but it will come to the surface, say, within the next half a decade or maybe a decade. But there could be, times when your virtual avatar is possibly doing this podcast with a virtual Gaurav and Meghna. There could be instances where an artist is performing three simultaneous concerts to a virtual audience. There could be artists that are created who don't exist in real life but have unique tonalities, and they're able to do things which a human being may not be able to pull off. So to me, in the content creator economy, you already have, I think, one influencer who has 100K followers, and she is a digital influencer, completely virtual. So to me, today we might be laughing at it, but it is going to become a reality. So I would say that multiple platforms coming in, local, hyper local content syndication, fan funding or brand funding is the second, and possibly the metaverse would be the third big dimension that comes.
So let me get this right. There's an actual avatar, I mean, not an actual person, who has more than 100,000 followers and who's an
Yeah,
influencer.
Yes, that is
But
yeah,
absolutely right.
somebody's got to have created it, right? Somebody's got to own that.
Yes, yes. So there are companies now who are creating these very, very interesting, digital, I would say, characters. And look, K-pop has been creating interesting characters for the last 10 years. And literally these artists are manufactured by creative geniuses, who think of what should this artist stand for and represent, right? It's almost as deep as a movie script or a movie character. So tomorrow people will now, create these virtual DJs, virtual artists, virtual dancers. There could be virtual coaches who don't exist in real life, but they're teaching people multiple subjects. And there could be AI driven approach where, based on the commonality of these questions and the kind of answers that are making an impact, the right kind of information is given out. And this can be done in multiple languages, depending upon where you come from. I think it's very exciting, and a lot of it is technology that you would have laughed at 10 years back. It is right now at the stage where it's just becoming possible or feasible. But 10 years down the line, it's going to become so commonplace that we'll take it for granted, like how we are taking the internet or social media for granted.
Sounds like Terminator stuff, but I'm going to keep an open mind to
Right.
it. Meghna, tell us about G Sharp, Songfest, and Hooper.
So GSharp is a music tech company, and we are operating two brands under GSharp. One is, of course, Hooper.ai, which is a licensing marketplace. It's India's largest music licensing marketplace that now allows content creators and, in fact, brands also to discover, the right kind of music that they can use for their videos, right? So we have over 25,000 plus tracks which are available on the platform from different categories, from different use cases that now content creators can essentially use for their videos without having to actually worry about any sort of copyright claims or strikes, getting on their content. So it's a subscription based model that we are running with Hooper.ai. And with Songfest, it acts as a brand solutions arm of Hooper because although we started Songfest prior to Hooper, and when we were working with brands, we realized how the requirement of music, or how could this entire music and influencer collaboration could work in a much better fashion now. So with Hooper, now Songfest actually acts as a extended brand solutions arm, and we are creating many of these activation campaigns for brands, right? And with GSharp on a larger, level, we are constantly investing into tools and technologies to, build newer platforms that could help many more creators to create better content, brands to create better content and reach out to their audiences. And at the same time, because we are music tech, right, we also strongly support the entire musicians ecosystem, right, and finding ways for them to actually be able to monetize and generate revenue for their music, right?
So, Meghna and Gaurav, here's a question I ask all my guests at the end of the show. Why do you do this work? Meghna, why don't you go first?
I think so, there are two things. Inherently, if you see a lot of our team members, in fact, 80 to 90% of our team members also love what we do, right? And being passionate about music, being passionate about content, creativity, that is something that, attracts a lot of talent, in fact, within the ecosystem of G Sharp, right? And inherently, because, Gaurav has been a musician, Gaurav has been an entrepreneur since a while, it's inherently ingrained in the entire DNA of the company, right? So whatever we do, we have to be passionate about it. We constantly think about, content creation. In fact, our users also, content creators also. So I think if you love something, you don't have to really, put a lot of course, you have to put efforts either ways. But yes, we enjoy putting that effort because we love what we do. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're very passionate about this space, goes without saying. And we always ask ourselves this question, हम नहीं बनाएंगे तो फिर कौन बनाएगा? Because we understand the space, we understand technology, we understand
Yes.
content, we understand marketing. So it's not like we are suddenly creating a health tech app or a grocery app. We are passionate about this space. We understand this space. We have domain expertise here, and most of the stuff that we build is coming from actual experience and understanding of what creators would need, right? So I think we've backed ourselves, and I think it's being a creator at heart. Earlier we started with creating content, but now we are also creating these tools and platforms. So it's a very exciting journey, and unless you challenge yourselves, or unless जैसे हमारे यहाँ IIM में कहते थे कि अगर आपकी फटी नहीं है तो आप कुछ बड़ा नहीं कर रहे हो. So at every stage you have to create something which is bigger, which is for us, we've created the first music licensing marketplace. And Ashraf, I mean, we've India has been into music and film since so many years, and abroad, music licensing has been almost there for 3 decades now. But in India, we are the first to do it. So sometimes you also have to say that, hey, we have to take responsibility of pushing the ecosystem a bit, and going out there and pitching the larger story. So we are backing ourselves, and we are doing it, and we are having a blast, a whale of
Right. So passion, domain expertise, and experience, और आपकी फटी नहीं है तो बड़ा नहीं कर रही हो. Meghna and Gaurav, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking about a space that I'm part of too, and which I find fascinating.
Absolutely. Our
Thank you
pleasure.
so
Thank you
much,
so much,
Gaurav.
Ashraf. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in, for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter At Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINEER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.